When my daughter-in-law told me to leave my own home, I did not say a single word back. I just stood there in the kitchen doorway, holding the warm cup of coffee I had made for her, and I smiled, even though my hands were shaking. I do not know why I smiled. Maybe it was the only thing I had left at that moment. Maybe I did not want her to see how deeply those words cut me. She did not raise her voice. She did not look angry. She looked tired, like she had been holding this in for a long time. She said, "Mom, I think it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while." Just like that. Simple, soft, but it felt like the floor moved from under my feet. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to remind her that I was the one who helped raise her babies, the one who kept this home together when my son worked long nights. But the words never came. Instead, I whispered, "All right, if that's what you need." And she walked away before she could see the tear that slid down my cheek. I did not know it then, but that small moment would open the door to a truth I had ignored for years, a truth about myself, my son, my home, and the quiet loneliness that had slowly taken root inside these walls. I want to take you back a little, so you understand how we reached that moment. Because things like this, they don't happen all of a sudden. They grow quietly, like weeds in a garden you thought was doing just fine. I raised my son, Daniel, in this same house. Back then, it was smaller, older, creaking in the winter and heating up like an oven in the summer. But to me, it was home. And to him, it was everything we had. I was a single mother, working 2 jobs for most of his childhood. Morning shifts at the grocery store, late night cleaning work at the library. I got used to being tired, but I always told myself, if he grows up kind, it'll all be worth it. And he did. He was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of boy who hugged me before school and left little notes on the fridge when he knew I was sad. He grew up fast, too fast sometimes. By the time he turned 18, he was already talking about how he wanted to take care of me one day. Well, life has a funny way of flipping things around. He met Emily, my daughter-in-law, in college. She was quiet, polite, and always looked like she had a lot on her mind. At first, I thought she didn't like me, but Daniel told me she was simply shy and not used to being around new people. When he brought her to our home for the first time, I remember standing in the doorway, wiping my hands on my apron, hoping she saw warmth instead of nervousness in my smile. "Mom, this is Emily," he said, and she gave me a small smile, the kind where the lips move, but the eyes stay unsure. Over the next few years, things changed slowly. Daniel finished school, they got married, and after a long, hard conversation about rent and childcare, I agreed they could move into my home until they were steady enough to afford their own. It felt right at the time. Family is supposed to help each other. At least that's what I had always believed. When their first child was born, I stepped in as much as I could. Early mornings, sleepless nights, diapers, bottles, rocking the baby while Emily rested. She struggled a lot in those days. New motherhood is tough, and she didn't have her own mom around to guide her. There were times she would look at me with exhaustion in her eyes and whisper, "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." And those words kept me going. They made me feel needed again. But as the kids grew older, things started to shift. Emily became more confident as a mother. Daniel began working longer hours, and slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, my role in the house got smaller. I used to cook every meal. Then it became dinners only. Then, "Mom, I'll cook tonight." Even when I knew she didn't really want me in the kitchen. I used to wake the kids for school. Then one day she said, "I'll handle mornings from now on. You need rest." I tried to believe her. I tried to hear kindness in her voice, but deep down, I felt something else creeping in, the sense that I was in a home where I no longer belonged the way I used to. Still, I stayed quiet. Quiet is something you learn as you get older. You tell yourself, don't make trouble, don't be a burden. And maybe that silence was the biggest mistake I ever made. Because while I was holding in my worries, my fears, and that growing ache inside me, they were building their own tensions, their own frustrations, their own belief that maybe I was the one causing the cracks in the walls of this home. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that life had gotten quieter, and the quieter it got, the more I felt like a ghost wandering my own house. The cracks didn't show in one big moment. They showed in little things, things most people would ignore. But when you live in a home long enough, you can feel when the air changes. You can feel when the warmth starts fading. It began with the kitchen. I've always loved cooking. It's how I show love, through warm meals, soft bread, and the smell of something on the stove. For years, the kitchen was my little corner of purpose. But one morning, I walked in and found a small note on the counter. Just a little sticky note with Emily's handwriting. Please clean up after cooking. It gets messy for the kids. I stood there staring at it for a long time. The stove was clean. The counters were clean. The sink had one pan inside it, soaking because it was burnt at the bottom. I thought, maybe she's having a hard day. So I didn't say anything. I just took the note and tucked it into my apron pocket. But the notes kept coming. Please ask before using the kids' snacks. Please keep noise down early mornings. Please don't leave the laundry in the dryer. Some were gentle. Some came off sharp, even if she didn't mean them to. I knew Emily wasn't trying to hurt me. I really did. She was managing 2 kids, a job, and a long list of responsibilities. She wanted order. She wanted her system, her way. But every note felt a little like being pushed back, as if my hands were no longer welcome in the home I had built. I tried to step back a little, thinking it might help. I stayed in my room more. I took walks outside. I made my coffee later than usual so I wouldn't get in the way. But stepping back didn't help. It only made the distance between us grow wider. One evening, I overheard something. I wasn't trying to listen. It just happened. Daniel came home late from work. His footsteps were heavy, tired. Emily met him in the kitchen. I heard her whisper sharply, "Your mom reorganized the pantry again. I spent hours fixing it last week. Why does she keep doing that?" Daniel sighed. He sounded worn out. She's just trying to help." "Well, it isn't helping," she snapped. "It's too much. She's always here. I feel like I'm living in someone else's house." My heart stopped, not because she said something cruel, but because she said it honestly. From her point of view, she wasn't wrong. This was my home, yes, but she was trying to build hers inside it. I went to bed early that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words again and again. She feels like she's living in someone else's house. Maybe I've been holding on too tightly. The next day, I tried even harder to give her space, but it only made things more uncomfortable. When I helped the kids with homework, she'd gently say, "I got it, thank you." When I started laundry, she'd say, "I already planned to do that." When I cooked dinner, she'd quietly redo the seasoning after I stepped away. There were no fights, no harsh words, just small signs, small shifts that told me I was becoming extra weight instead of support. Then came the day of the birthday party. We were celebrating my granddaughter's 7th birthday. I had baked a cake the night before, just like I always had. Vanilla with strawberries, her favorite. I placed it on the counter the morning of the party, proud and excited like any grandmother. But when Emily came downstairs, she froze. "Oh, you made a cake?" she said quietly. "Yes," I said with a smile. For her I know she loves. I already ordered one, she cut in. I didn't know you were planning to bake. Her voice wasn't rude. It was careful, too careful. She didn't want to hurt me, but the message was clear. My traditions were no longer needed. When the bakery cake arrived, mine stayed on the counter. No one touched it. It just sat there through the whole party, untouched like an old memory. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sliced a small piece for myself. It tasted sweeter than usual, but it made me feel emptier than I had felt in years. After the birthday party, the tension grew thicker. I could feel Emily watching everything I did, not out of anger, but out of pressure, like she was always trying to balance being respectful and overwhelmed. Daniel noticed the tension but didn't know how to handle it. One night, he sat beside me at the kitchen table. "Mom," he said softly, "maybe you should take a break sometimes. Go visit Aunt Karen or something. It might help everyone breathe. Everyone. Not just Emily. Not just him. Everyone." I felt my throat tighten. "Do you think I'm causing problems?" I asked quietly. He rubbed his forehead, tired from work and life. "No, Mom, you're not causing problems. There's just a lot going on. The house is small. The kids are loud. Everyone is stressed. We just need space." Space. That word again. It kept coming up like a reminder I didn't want. I nodded and said I understood. But inside, something in me shifted. I realized that love wasn't the only thing holding this house together anymore. There was pressure. There was exhaustion. There was unspoken resentment. And though no one said it directly, I could feel the truth growing louder every day. I was no longer part of the rhythm of this home. I was a reminder of how crowded their life had become. The day Emily finally asked me to leave wasn't a sudden storm. It was the end of a long, quiet drizzle. And deep down, I knew it was coming. The morning everything changed felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound your heart makes. It was a Saturday. Daniel had left early for work, even though he usually stayed home on weekends. Emily was in the kitchen, moving around softly, almost tiptoeing. The kids were watching cartoons in the living room, laughing at something silly. From upstairs, I could smell coffee brewing, warm, familiar, but it wasn't for me. Emily had switched to a stronger brand she liked, and I had slowly stopped making coffee for the house. Another small piece of routine that had drifted away. I walked down the stairs, holding onto the railing, not because I needed support, but because something inside me felt unsteady. When I stepped into the kitchen, Emily turned around quickly, too quickly, like she didn't expect to see me. "Good morning," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Her voice was soft, nervous. I noticed her hand shaking a little as she wiped the counter. "Morning," I replied, forcing a small smile. I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. I'd spent weeks trying to avoid tension, trying to make myself smaller so she could breathe. "Do you want some coffee?" I asked gently. She hesitated. Not long enough for someone unsure, long enough for someone preparing for something. "No, thank you," she said carefully. "I actually need to talk to you." There it was, the shift in the air, the weight behind her eyes. I set my cup down and leaned on the counter, already bracing myself. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She took a deep breath, the kind people take when they're about to say something they wish they didn't have to say. "Your son and I, we've been talking," she began. My heart dropped a little. Whenever someone starts a sentence like that, you know it's not going to end in kindness. "We feel like..." She paused again, searching for the right words. "Things have been very tense in the house." I nodded, even though she wasn't finished. "And we feel like everyone is walking on eggshells," she added. I swallowed. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to rush her. I wanted to be respectful, even though a storm was building inside my chest. She folded a small dish towel over and over in her hands. "I know you've done so much for us," she whispered, "and I'm grateful, truly, but the kids are getting older. They need their own environment. Daniel and I need our own space as parents, and I feel like the house is too full." Her voice trembled a little. "I feel overwhelmed," she admitted softly, "and sometimes I feel like I'm failing as a mom because you're always here doing things before I can." My breath caught in my throat, not because her words were cruel, but because they were painfully honest. I didn't realize how much my help had made her feel like she wasn't enough. I didn't realize how much pressure she carried trying to measure herself against someone who had raised a child before her, someone who knew the shortcuts and the routines she was still learning. I felt tears forming, but I blinked them away. "I never wanted you to feel less," I whispered. "I know," she said quickly. "I know you didn't, but I'm losing myself in this house. I need to stand on my own feet, and I need the kids to look at me as the one in charge." I nodded slowly, my hands twisting together. "So," I managed. "What do you want me to do?" Emily took a shaky breath. "We think it's better if you stay somewhere else, just for a while. Maybe with a friend or a relative. Just until we breathe a little." My chest tightened. The room felt smaller. The walls felt closer, but I stayed still. I didn't want her to feel guilty. I didn't want her to think she was doing something wrong. She was trying to build her own home, her own way. Then she said something I will never forget. "You built a good foundation here," she whispered, "but now we need to build the rest of it ourselves." That sentence broke me quietly, not in anger, not in disappointment, just in the soft, painful truth of it. She wasn't pushing me out because she hated me. She was trying to grow into something I didn't realize I was overshadowing. I nodded and managed a small smile. "All right," I said. "If that's what you need, I understand." She exhaled, relieved and heartbroken at the same time. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't want to hurt you." I touched her hand gently. "You didn't," I said softly, even though it felt like my heart was falling apart inside my chest. "You're doing what a mother should do. Protect her space, protect her family." She looked at me with tearful eyes. "You've done so much for us," she said. We need to learn to do things on our own now." I nodded again, because words felt too heavy. The kids were still laughing in the living room. The cartoons were still loud. The coffee machine still hummed behind us. Life kept moving, even though a part of me felt like it had stopped. I went upstairs to pack a small bag. Just clothes, nothing else. Not the photo frames, not the old recipes, not the little things I had placed around the house over the years. Those things belonged to the home, and the home belonged to them now. When I zipped the bag, tears finally slid down my cheeks. Not because I was angry, but because I finally accepted something I had ignored. You can build a home with your whole heart and still reach a day when the people in it need to build theirs without you. That was the day I realized the meaning of real love. Real love sometimes means stepping back, even when stepping back breaks you quietly. I left the house that afternoon with just one small bag and a quiet heart. Not peaceful, not yet, just quiet, like the silence that comes after a long cry. The sun was bright outside, and it almost felt wrong. A day like that should have felt warm, hopeful, full of life, but I felt like I was walking through a memory instead of a moment. I sat on the porch steps for a minute before leaving. I could hear the kids inside, my granddaughter's laugh, my grandson shouting something excitedly at the TV. Life was moving on without me, and for the first time in years, I wasn't part of their rhythm. My neighbor, Mrs. Turner, saw me sitting there and walked over. "Everything all right, honey?" she asked gently. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, "Yeah, just heading out for a while," but the words stuck. I think they need space," I whispered. She gave me that look older women give when they already know the truth without hearing details. A look full of understanding and no judgment. "You got a place to go?" she asked. I nodded. I had a small savings account. Not much, but enough for a few nights somewhere comfortable. I knew I'd figure things out from there. "Well," she said softly, "sometimes stepping back lets everyone breathe. Sometimes it's the only way they learn to reach for you again." I didn't know if that was true, but I held on to it anyway. Sometimes hope is the only thing you can carry. She helped me get a ride, and within an hour, I was checking into a small, quiet motel on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a simple place with clean sheets, soft lighting, and a window that looked out at a parking lot. When I sat on that bed, I finally felt the weight of everything I had been holding in. My chest felt tight, my eyes burned, and for the first time in a long time, I cried without trying to hide it. Not loud, not messy, just soft tears, the kind that come from years of giving and suddenly having nowhere to give. After a while, I took a deep breath, washed my face, and sat by the window. The evening light was fading, turning the sky orange and pink, the kind of colors that remind you life still has beauty, even on the days you feel broken. I stayed in that motel for 2 days. No calls, no texts, nothing from Daniel or Emily. I told myself they were giving me space. I told myself they were adjusting, but a part of me worried that maybe they were relieved, and that thought cut deeper than anything. On the 3rd day, I decided to take a walk. There was a small park across the street, nothing special, just a few benches and a worn-out path, but the air felt fresh, and I needed that. As I walked, I saw families playing, kids running, couples talking quietly. It reminded me of all the years I'd spent in parks with Daniel when he was little, when life felt simple, when I was his whole world. I sat on a bench and let the memories wash over me, not to hurt myself, but to remind myself that I had lived through tough seasons before. While I was sitting there, my phone buzzed. Just once. It was a message from Daniel. "Mom, can we talk?" My heart jumped, not from fear, but from the sudden rush of hope. I typed back, "Of course." 15 minutes later, he showed up at the park. He looked tired. He looked older than I remembered. Life has a way of aging people quietly. When he reached the bench, he sat down without saying a word. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the wind, the kids laughing in the distance, the soft crunch of leaves. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." I didn't look at him right away. I didn't want him to think I needed an apology from him. I just needed honesty. He took a deep breath. "I didn't handle things right," he said. "I should have talked to you earlier. I should have asked how you were feeling. I let everything pile up." I nodded softly. "We've all been tired," I said quietly. "But I shouldn't have let Emily talk to you alone about leaving," he continued. "That was my responsibility. You're my mom, and I should have been part of that conversation." He sounded ashamed, and I hated that. "Daniel," I whispered, "I don't want you to feel guilty. I understand why it happened. You both needed space. You needed to grow as parents. And I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I needed to learn to let you." He looked at me with eyes full of emotion. "I don't want you to feel like you don't belong," he said. You always will." I smiled gently. "A home changes when new people join it," I said. "And sometimes the ones who built the home have to step back so new roots can grow." He shook his head. "I don't want you to step back. I want you to feel loved. You don't have to choose," I said softly. You can build your own home and still love the one you came from." He wiped a tear from his eye, something I hadn't seen him do since he was a child. "Emily's been crying," he said. "She feels terrible. She thinks she pushed you away." "I don't blame her," I said honestly. She spoke from her heart, and sometimes the truth hurts, even when it's gentle. He nodded. "We want you to come home," he said. I took a long breath, not because I didn't want to go, but because I needed to think of what was best for everyone. "I'll come visit," I said softly. "I'll come for dinner, for the kids, for holidays, for all the moments that matter. But I think it's time for you and Emily to build your home your way." He looked down. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm sure," I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. We sat together for a long time on that bench, mother and son, not talking much, just sharing the silence the way we used to. Before he left, he hugged me tightly, longer than usual, the kind of hug that carries years of love, worry, and unspoken words. When I returned to the motel that evening, something felt lighter in my chest. Not fixed, not fully healed, but lighter, like I had finally let myself breathe. I realized something important that night. You don't stop being a mother just because your child grows up, but you do have to learn how to love them in a new way, a way that gives them room to build their own life. And sometimes that's the hardest part of love. A few weeks passed after that day in the park, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Not the old rhythm I had known for so many years, but something gentler, something clearer, something that didn't hurt the way it once did. I found a small apartment not far from their home, just enough space for me, a cozy bedroom, a little kitchen, and a window that looked out over a line of old maple trees. When the wind blew, they made a soft rustling sound that reminded me of the way the house used to whisper at night. It made the place feel alive. Daniel and Emily helped me move in. The kids ran around excitedly, exploring every corner like they were discovering a secret world. My granddaughter stood in the middle of my living room and announced, "Grandma, this is your house." Her little voice made my heart melt. For the first time in a long time, I felt something warm settling inside me, a quiet kind of peace I hadn't expected. I started visiting their home again, but differently this time. No rushing to clean, no stepping in before being asked. I'd come for dinner, sit on the couch, and let them run their home the way they needed to. Sometimes Emily would ask for advice. "How did you get Daniel to eat vegetables?" Or, "What did you do when he wouldn't sleep?" And I'd answer softly, only when she wanted to hear. The tension that once filled the house slowly faded. We learned how to breathe around each other again, not as three adults sharing tight space, but as a family finding its balance. One evening, Emily surprised me. She walked me to the door after dinner and said quietly, "I'm really glad you're still part of our life. I didn't mean to make you feel unwanted." I looked at her, this young woman trying her best, and I felt no anger, only understanding. "You didn't make me feel unwanted," I said gently. "You helped me realize that love changes shape, and sometimes we just need to make room for it." She nodded, her eyes soft with relief. As the months went by, I found myself growing too, rediscovering who I was outside of being a mother, outside of being a helper, outside of being the one people relied on. I took up small hobbies again. I planted herbs on my windowsill. I joined a little book club at the library. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't just a grandmother. I was me again. And in that new identity, I found strength I didn't know I still had. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see in the moment. A home isn't just bricks and rooms. A home is where love grows. And sometimes love has to stretch, change, and even step aside so it can grow stronger. I built that first home with my own hands and my whole heart. And when the time came, I let the next generation build theirs. Not because I was pushed out, but because real love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to gently let go. And if life ever brings you to a moment like mine, where stepping back feels like breaking, just remember this. Sometimes the quietest love, the one without anger, without shouting, without blame, is the love that heals a family the most. And that's the lesson I carry with me every single day.